All right, I want to welcome in my guest today, Mr. Dan Istvanik, and he is the family pastor at Abidu Christian Church. Also, a good friend of mine. We've ate together. We've done some ministry together at Youth Specialties. We've done some things together there, Dan. It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
And you were just talking earlier about the weather, and you're in Chicago now. Is that right?
We are. We're in Chicago almost 3 years now, so we get that nice windy city snow going on outside today. So it's nice and cold.
So Dan, we were talking, and we wanted to say, what do we want to talk about today? And I think that what fits in our wheelhouse today, we want to talk about raising the bar, that youth pastors, individuals who are leaders in the youth ministry, they are the youth pastor, they are the head person, and we talked about raising the bar individually. I felt like that's a good place for our audience, because I think that fits in our wheelhouse, the things that I like to talk about, the things I think that our audience likes to hear. And so you tell me then, what does a low bar look like for a youth pastor? What is a low bar?
Wow. A low bar. Well,
yeah,
I think in a lot of ways, sometimes, you coming into a church, especially a young youth pastor, you see the bar really lowered in expectations for you. And that's the concern. We're seeing a lot of that. And also the problem is that people are accepting it. They're accepting the low bar of like, oh, where you're just a flaky, young, fresh out of college guy, gal. You just kind of hang out with kids, you play dodgeball, you eat some pizza, and maybe you read a Bible verse to them before you go home. And I think there really needs to be a bar of expectation that raised, but also we need to raise our own expectation and our professionalism, showing that we are not just, you and I have been talking about it. 28 years, 30 years doing this. This is a profession. This is not just a quick thing we do because we can't figure out what we want to do with the rest of our lives. And so as coming into a new church, we really want to raise the bar to the top. And I tell a lot of people, I talk to my young youth director I just hired, I say, hey, there's a difference between perfection and excellence, that we need to bring excellence into our ministry. I'm not expecting perfection. And that's where we need to be.
So where have you seen this on a local level? Where have you seen a low bar? What would you consider low bar practices? And I'll jump into something else you said earlier, but just give me some examples of what you're looking at across the playing field of youth ministry, what you would consider low bar activities, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Low bar principles, or low bar practices, if you will.
For sure. I think one of the things that really is it's a kind of a joke among senior pastors and honestly other staff members, but across the board is the youth pastor that's flaky, that forgets appointments, shows up late to things, doesn't dress professionally, doesn't return emails, sends out emails without, correction in grammar, gets up on a Sunday morning and doesn't talk like an adult, talks like a kid, tries to use, hip, cool terms with the senior adults doing announcements. And all those things just set you up for losing respect in front of everybody else. And I see it all the time, and I laugh about it. I coach young youth pastors and I say, I'm not trying to change who you are, but you have to understand your context of ministry. When you're talking to students, you can act just like a student, you act like kind of a little bit like a student, you can be kind of more relaxed. But when you're a professional and you're in front of adults that are professionals, you need to act in accordance. I think a great way that I learned this really quickly is I was youth pastor for 2 years in Washington, D.C., about 9 miles from the Pentagon. My senior pastor walked in and said, you are now at a higher expectation because of who you minister to. These kids' parents are lieutenant colonels, generals coming from the Pentagon. They walk in this building in their military blues. They're expecting to see you in some semblance of respect and professionalism. You sitting here in flip-flops and cut off shorts is not going to cut it for a guy who just left, the Pentagon to come have a meeting with you about his child. And that, to me, really raised the bar for me and my expectations, but it's based on context. I was a youth pastor in Louisiana for many years ago, and it's a different expectation. I'm talking to guys coming straight off the farm, walking in. I want to be a professional. I will raise the bar in my expectations for them and for myself, but it's a different expectation. They're not expecting me to be in a shirt and tie like some churches have required, but it's understanding what the bar is. And that's a huge thing. One of the conversations I had recently with a group of youth pastors is understanding expectations. The biggest thing, frustration, anger, disappointment in your ministry on your side, but also in the side of your parents, your staff, is going to be not understanding and not clearly articulating what you're expecting or what's expected of you.
Yeah, such a good point, Dan, because the area context matters. What is high level in Louisiana is not high level in Washington, D.C., right?
Absolutely.
And in Washington, I mean, look, these are folks, you were serving folks that could drop a bunker buster on your house if you wanted,
Yes.
if they wanted, if their kid was not getting proper attention, right?
It could happen,
Your house could get strafed, just as a warning.
This is a warning,
that my child, you need to let my child come on the retreat.
Yeah.
Why
did you cut my daughter from the worship team? Had that conversation.
That's right. And you got people with black sunglasses and earpieces showing up, just driving past your house, just reporting on things. But
I'm not allowed to talk about that anymore.
That's right. There's a lot of things we're not allowed to talk about. That's right. Not allowed to talk about things. We don't talk about that anymore. So in putting that in context, wherever you're at, when you're watching this, youth pastors, and you're listening to this, wherever you serve, you need to figure out what the expectation is, and then go up a little bit higher.
Yep.
Right? You say, look, this is what the expectation is. I'm going to go one more further. And tell me, Dan, before I get into another question, why is this bad for youth ministry in general? Why is the bar and setting the bar so low? Why is that bad for youth ministry in general?
I think it really comes down to longevity. I mean, personal longevity, but also longevity of position. When your bar is set low and you set your bar low, you're easier to be fired or let go. To be real, I mean, if you are doing a job with a high level of excellence and you're trying to do your best and you're presenting yourself as a professional on a staff, you're not looked at as expendable. And that's a hard truth, but there's a lot of young guys and gals that I talk to that are like, well, we got fired. And I'm like, okay, or we're being let go. And it was an easy one for our church because we've just continued to kind of set our bar so low and allow our bar to be set low. And I think it really comes down to commitment. I mean, I talk a lot to young youth pastors about, the levels of excellence that we need to have: good communication, high character, high commitment, and better communication. And the kind of the 4 C's of really raising that bar.
Well, yeah. And I love that because, there's so many youth pastors that are not the goal. And I think what you're saying is, you need to make yourself indispensable. You need to make yourself a linchpin in some way as a youth pastor, because if you are dispensable, if we can get trained monkeys to come in here and do what you do, we don't need you. Yeah. And so you have to be, and I think a lot of that has to do with relational capital. It has a lot to do with investment. It has a lot to do with how people receive you. If the general congregation doesn't like you or doesn't like your flip-flops or like your whatever your jam is, if they feel like they can do without that, they're going to let the pastor know. The board's going to let you know that we can live without that. That's fine. Yeah. We can find somebody else that can do that can wear proper shoes on a Sunday morning.
Honestly, yeah. I think you were mentioning Indispensable. A great book is called The Indispensable Youth Pastor, that I've taken my interns through numerous times. I'm taking my current student director through, just kind of walking through just basics, just saying, hey, let's just make sure that we are setting the bar at a better level, so that anybody who looks at us says, hey, this ministry is here. It's above average, and it's really saying, hey, we want to make sure that we're indispensable, but our ministry is indispensable. But it becomes a priority when you put a ministry of excellence in front of parents, so they can start prioritizing your ministry. We have all these people, oh, well, parents prioritize other stuff besides us. Well, some of those other things are done in such a way with some excellence that I'm going to choose to have my kid go to that instead of this, because they're running at a level of excellence. I mean, that coach, that sports team, that drama department is running an excellent program. Right. And your program is, it's dispensable. It can become second or third in our list of things because my kid's getting more here out of this other thing.
That 100%, and that's exactly too what Andrew Root talks about in his book.
Absolutely.
Youth Ministry. He talks about, look, parents are going to make choices based on things like excellence, things like what makes my kid happy. Well, you know what? Disorganization and crappy relationships and lack of communication and all this other stuff, if it's just such a low bar type of thing that you're just throwing things together, it's easy to make the other choice. We as youth pastors cannot make it easy for parents and others. We should make it hard for them to choose between that retreat that we're planned and that band camp. We should make it hard for the summer to go on the missions trip or to go on some trip with you, to do baseball and travel ball. We should make it hard for them in some ways, right? Because if the level of excellence is there, if at least it matches, right, to what is being offered, we're at least being competitive. But if we're not trying our best, if we're not planning our best, if we're not offering our best in all areas, then we are conceding that what we have is less than, and that you should go ahead and choose otherwise.
Yeah. One of my most popular posts on my website, Youth Min Hub, is the 10 reasons why kids choose sports over student ministry. And I mean, it's got a ton of responses, people pro and con to what I had to say, but there's 10, I think, very, very good reasons as a sports dad, writing to other youth pastors who are maybe sports dads too. But here's why. I mean, I understand why parents do choose, in some cases, choose sports over youth ministry. And there's 10 reasons. And one of those things is really is the level of excellence of leadership, that we have a coach that's high level, and then they come to church and there's this guy or gal, and they're maybe younger, maybe older, but they're not bringing that expectation, that presentation of competence, even if it's perceived competence, is a big deal.
Right. And we're not talking, like you said, we're not talking about perfection here. We're just talking about a reasonable sense that, can I trust you that what you're going to do is going to be of value to my child? Is it going to be valuable, or is it just another thing? Is it just another thing on my calendar? Does this thing have purpose? Does it have, some direction? Is it going to benefit my child in some way other than just fulfill your agenda, to fulfill your numbers goal, to fulfill your whatever? Is it a quality program? And I'm going to put another book. By the way, I'm going to put that link to that book, The Indispensable Youth Pastor. I'll put that down in the show notes. And I'm also going to put Seth Godin's Linchpin is another great book.
Great book.
About finding it being indispensable. I'm going to put that down there as well, because I think those two books together will give you a very good perspective about how to make yourself invaluable to others. So tell me real quick then, how can a youth pastor then, what are some incremental ways that you think that youth pastors can raise the bar, small changes they can make? And, really why, we've talked a lot about the reasons why they should make them, but it's okay. It bears repeating why they should make the small changes you're going to ask them to make. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I have the kind of those 3 C's in front of me that I use in coaching young youth pastors. One of those is, first thing is communication. Making sure that your communication is constant, consistent, and clear, always. And making sure that you go back, do a quick grammar check. It's not going to download Grammarly, pay the money, but don't send out emails that are, just look like there was somebody from a 10th grader sent them out and they had spell checked them. Competence, just presenting yourself in a way that shows that you can do your job and you're good at your job. Something that I do is we put out a year-long calendar so parents know and they can plan ahead for what we do. So every September we sit down with a calendar. We have the big rocks. Obviously, don't want every little thing, but the big events for every single month. And then we already have camps, summer camps, retreats, of conferences, mission trips, all planned out all the way for a year ahead. But that just shows competence. Like, oh, this person thought and planned ahead. Something that I do personally, and we've done for many years, is I have a scope and sequence of teaching so that parents know exactly what I'm teaching over the full entire year. And actually, we've created an 8-year scope and sequence. So 5th to 12th grade, they know when we're teaching, how we're teaching it, what topics we'll cover, in what order. Very similar to what the education model is of scope and sequence, statewide standards. And what happens is just shows the parents like, oh, they're thinking ahead about me. And it's simple. I mean, scope and sequence is a bit harder to develop, but it's something that you can do. Even if you have curriculum, you have scope and sequence a lot of times in your curriculum, just share it. I think another thing is just that idea that we are there and we're presenting character, that when a parent talks to us, brings a complaint to us, we address them back as a fellow adult, look them in the eye, respond to them. But the awe, the no response just shows a lack, so just presents itself as a lack of character. And those are those couple of things like, oh, okay, they're willing to engage me, hear my critique, which is hard, let's be real, but they're willing to listen. Honestly, we even invite conversations of listening. Like, how can we sit down and listen to you? We have 3 key parent meetings a year. And part of that parent meeting is just listening. We want to hear from you. I know I've presented all my information. Tell us what we can do better, what you love to see happen. And then we try to invite conversations. Hey, can I have you out for coffee? we spend a lot of times as youth pastors going out with students, going to schools, wherever we can do, wherever we're allowed to do in our culture, currently. But it's always a welcome to call it, a fellow dad and say, hey, I'm going to take you out for coffee. Or if you're not a dad, calling a dad and saying, hey, can I have an hour of your time to buy a cup of coffee? I would love to hear about your life, your family. And then also I would love to hear some feedback on what we're doing in youth ministry. And it's hard to hear them of those things, but immediately buys a whole lot of confidence, and it shows character.
Right. And you are building capital is what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You are building capital for a future decision you may have to make, or a future conflict you may have. Because if you're showing competency all along, people are going to then assume the best of you, not the worst. It's not going to be, that, idiot,
right,
did this thing. They're not going to assume that just, that lazy or that guy or that girl or whatever.
I think the last thing is commitment. Is really, so many parents I interact with is, how long will you really be here? Or you guys hired someone, will he really last? And we want to present ourselves as, no, this is a committed role. This person we hired, me, as the family pastor of my church, we are here because we care about you. I'm not looking for this to be a stepping stone. I'm not looking for this to be, and maybe if it is, don't make it obvious. Don't talk about, what you're looking for next, because kids are going to turn off, parents are going to turn off. They're not going to look at you as someone that's permanent. If you're not saying, hey, I'm committed to being here, and committed to you. And that's hard. I mean, I'll be real. I mean, I was a youth, when I was a youth, 9th to 12th grade, we went through 4 college-age youth pastors in 4 years. Young guys that were at college or just out of college, and we rotated through those guys 4 times. And we just knew the next guy coming in, we're like, man, we're not going to listen to him. Parents didn't really listen to him. And we just knew, based on the experience we had. And it's hard. Sometimes you have to live that down. And that's tough. It's a tough place to be.
It is a tough place to be. And you listen, college guys, if you're listening, this is no
we love you.
Upon you. Okay. There's plenty of college guys out there doing a great job, but like I said, not all college folks are equal. But I will say this too, you make such good points about the communication part, and about character, and about commitment, and about these things these are things that there's no class for that per se. Right. Those are things you have to work on. Those are things you have to just say, I'm going to do it. But the question that I would say, my last question would be is, how then can youth pastors avoid raising the bar too high?
Absolutely.
So like I don't know if you did scope and sequence, and this is going to sound really bad. I don't know if you did scope and sequence in Louisiana, right? There's going to be some communities and churches that could give a rip less when you did a year-long teaching plan. It's all scaled to the level of the community you're in. You have to scale to the level, to the bar. You're like, listen, if the bar is up there to where it says, look, we expect you to be at, hospital visits, and that's kind of like a major thing. Well, then you got to raise the bar up. You got to be at all these hospital visits, or you got to be at the seniors meeting, or whatever that is. So I don't know if you did scope and sequence, but you can raise the bar too high to where you are, almost saying, hey, I'm possibly better than you. And so let me show you how to do this thing. Okay. So how do we avoid this problem, Dan? Because there's some guys that do it. I've done it. So I know
we've all been there. Young youth pastors in Louisiana, I set the bar way too high because I came in and did everything the first 6 months. I'm going to do it all. I had these great ideas, these big ideas. I didn't pace myself. And so once you raise the bar, once you say, well, he came out to every single game the first 6 months, or he did these 7 events and within the first 6 months, why is he only doing 3 events in the next 6 months? To be very fair, high energy youth pastor comes in and says, hey, I want to impress everyone. Yeah. I tell people, once again, talk to young youth pastors, say, pace yourself, come up with the ideas, spend about 6 months learning the culture, learning the area. Then, not that you're not doing anything for 6 months, build relational equity, do events that are relational based, do great things, and then find the sweet spots that you're going to put your energy in, because you will burn out. That's the reason why you'll leave early and you won't be committed, is you'll burn out. We talk to youth pastors all the time and said, set the bar lower and then work your way up to the spot you want to be in. There's certain things that might need to happen immediately. set that bar there, go for it. But don't set it so high that it's not consistent and not attainable for the long haul. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It really is. And if you're sprinting, you will live up to all the weird stereotypes of 2 to 3 year youth pastors. Because, hey man, he burned out after 2 years. He stayed for another year and then he was gone, or she was gone. But setting that bar at a point where you work your way up. And once again, a great article I put out that's had some great feedback was, we have an article called New Sheriff in Town on my website. And it's all about having 6 bullets, walking in with 2 big bullets, 4 small bullets, spending 6 months choosing your targets, firing those bullets well, then waiting another 6 months to build relational equity, to reload your gun. Sorry for the anti-gun people, but you reload your gun to restart the next things that need to happen. And you buy that, you walk in with those already some bullets. You're new, you have some honeymoon periods, so you have some easy spots. Take the ones you need to take, hold those bullets you need to hold on to, but only choose 2 big things, 4 small things, and then wait, earn your relational equity, and then fire those next shots after you build relationships, but you also invested in the ministry. Find out what you're shooting at. Because I talk all the time, and I walked in the first 3 weeks and I fired this person. I renamed the ministry. I changed the logo. We rebranded everything. And I'm like, wait at least 6 months before you let leaders go, you rebrand, you rename the church. I mean, whatever, you just wait 6 months.
That's right. Rename the church without the pastor's permission. Oh, pastor, while you were going on vacation, I renamed the church, and we put a new sign out there. So hope you like it.
Yeah.
Well, John Maxwell talks about the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
There is a ceiling.
Yep.
And you can't raise the bar higher than that ceiling. And that whatever that ceiling is in your church, you have to say, look, I can't, there's some things I can't go past or shouldn't go past for authority reasons, right? Mm-hmm. You're not trying to outshine anybody. You're not trying to outshine the pastor. You're not trying to outshine the board. You're not trying to say, look how smart I am. Look how cool I am. You can literally raise the bar so high that you raise yourself out of a job. Because if you're trying so hard to show that you're so valuable and doing all these things, and tell me this is right, Dan, you can't take the Washington template and put it on top of the Louisiana church.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Or can you take the Louisiana template and put it on top of the Washington church that you served in? Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's once again, those big mistakes, little mistakes is youth pastors who I did this at one church, it's going to work everywhere. Or this worked when I was a youth group kid and I have to do ministry this way. And if we're not flexible enough to change and to adapt our ministries to the people and to our students, we will be out of a job. And once again, you have these conversations. Well, when I was in youth group, that was 20 years ago, or that was 5 years ago, that was 10. Also, that was context. You grew up in the country, you're now in the city. I live in just outside of Chicago. I can see the skyline from Chicago. We live in to be very, very real, affluent area. What's going to work? What worked maybe in like Philadelphia, where I came from, in a more of a suburb, more, middle class, may or may not work here. Blue collar, nothing wrong. But you can't just go, all right, but even my lessons, my games, my activities, if I'm in an area that's affluent, you know what? Some of the things I do just are not going to work because, well, those kids can do all these other things. So you need to be a little more creative sometimes, believe it or not. But you're not going to impress people. And if you're out to impress your kids or impress parents, that's really going to be a hard spot to be in because you're always working. And that's where we raise that bar. I have to impress. Don't impress anybody. Do ministry, make sure that God's word is being spoken, find some creative ways to do what you do, but get to know your students and then find out what they like, not just what impresses them, but what they enjoy, what's going to get their friends to come and enjoy, because there's these quick little flashes that we do in ministry. We all know the tricks, but gone are the days of the big event where you bring in the big speaker, the big band, you have a big flash, and then everybody comes in and they stick around for the next year or two. The events we do them, they'll show up for 1-2 weeks, they're gone. And we need to think about sustainability.
That's right.
Sustainability. It was an excellent event. That was a perfect event. Well, the excellence is week in and week out, consistently doing what you do and doing it well. Not trying to, once a year I do this big event and I do that. That's my big thing and I'm gonna live off that. We could, let's be real, 28 years ago, we could live off of the momentum of a couple big events. That's and right. everybody loved us.
Yep.
That's not happening anymore, especially
Yep.
post-COVID. Post-COVID, it's a whole different world we're living in.
That's right. And it takes a lot more work. It takes a lot more work than doing one event, two events a year. It's a lot more work to incrementally raise the bar and say, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to work on the 3 C's you talked about, right? I'm going to work on not raising the bar too fast. I'm going to work on myself, right? And that's it. The youth worker, it's more work where you used to rely upon the events. Now you have to work on your character. Now you have to work on it's just more work. But in the end, it's better for you as a youth pastor. It's better for you for sustainability purposes. It's better for you to do that, because a person that can throw big events is one thing. A person that can work on his character incrementally, show up every day, every week, show up, that's far more valuable than a person that can throw a couple of big events together.
You said keyword work. Youth ministry is work. And for, nothing against my young youth pastors listening in, but I want to be real. 28 years, 30 years with you, it's been a job. Not just a job, but it's been work. We show up, we're putting in time to make sure that we day in and day out show up. And that's sometimes it's just showing up. Yep. That youth pastor that sleeps in, comes in late, in his pajama pants and hangs out in the office and plays video games. That's not reality. Right. And that the expectation is not going to be met. And parents and students and even staff are going to look at you like, I can't take you seriously. And that's hard. That's a hard truth. And I talk to, college students. My daughter's at Moody Bible. I talk to young guys who are talking about youth ministry. And I was like, can I tell you about the reality of my job? I love what I do, but understand there is work that has to be done. There is a job element to what I do. I don't spend all day praying and reading the Bible. I do spend as much time as I can, but there's a whole lot of paperwork, a whole lot of budgets.
That's right.
Sometimes there's some maintenance. I got to go. My maintenance crew calls me and said, "Hey, we need to clean this stuff up." I'm not above cleaning toilets, so let's be real.
In fact, that'll be the first thing. If you're unwilling to clean toilets, you should probably not do youth ministry. You probably should just get out now. I'm just going to say that. Okay. But Dan, thank you so much. Boy, this is such good information. This is just been a masterclass, I think, on really working on raising the bar individually, and the work that you're encouraging youth workers to take on. And if you're watching this or you're listening to this, be sure to go ahead and reach out to Dan. Dan, once again, he is the family pastor at Abidu Christian. He is the owner of Youthman Hub. All the links will be down below. I'll link all those articles he talked about. They're great articles. I've used a lot of Dan's materials, especially this past Christmas, used a lot of games, a lot of things like that. So he's got resources. He's got some great stuff. But Dan, go ahead and let everybody know, other than those areas, where can other people reach out to you if they want to ask questions or just get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. All of us, we're on social media, so you can find myself or Youthman Hub on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. We're kind of everywhere you need to be. We just want to be out there and be available. My email is part of that website. So it's really is dhispanic@youthmanhub.com. You can email anytime. I try to keep my messenger open as much as I can on all the different, platforms. So it's not unusual for me to receive, messages and just quick, hey, I need quick help with tonight, or hey, this thing can just happen with my pastor. I am more than willing to be available. That's, part of what my heart is. Secondary beyond student ministry is to help youth pastors stay in youth ministry. That's my heart. And the same thing with my wife. We don't talk about it a ton, but my wife is super available to wives and women in ministry. And she's done a lot of things, and she's available as well through my website, just to give some encouragement to the wives and to women in ministry.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for your 28 years thus far.
Thank you.
I think you got a few more in you. So stick with it, brother. Appreciate you coming on today and encouraging the folks that are listening and watching today.
Well, thanks for having me on.